record.
All right, I am recording, so if anyone doesn't want to be recorded, leave now. Please don't leave now.
Or forever hold your peace. Hey, there's Bob. Well, welcome everybody to the Murray Amateur Radio Club's third Thursday club meeting. And let's go ahead and have everybody mute their microphones unless they have a question or something. And during this presentation, it is being recorded. If you do have any questions at any time, just speak right up. Don't raise your hand. Just go ahead and say, hey, I got a question. Tonight, we are going to be continuing our discussion on DMR. And it seems that DMR is getting more and more popular. And so I wanted to kind of demystify some of the things that you hear all the time when you talk about DMR, digital mobile radio. Jan last week, of course, gave a presentation on DMR and gave a very good presentation, kind of explaining the technology behind the madness. And that was very, very, very good. I am, just so everybody knows, I am creating a YouTube channel for MARC, and I'm going to pop all of these presentations up there. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Sherwood to give our presentation. Ha! Okay. You had 8 minutes to figure something up, Sherwood. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. And as you can see, I have two machines going. And so I'm actually recording this presentation on one, and I'm going to share my screen on this one here that I'm looking into. So let's go ahead and share my screen. And everybody should see The Greatest Showman.
Yep, we got it.
Okay, why doesn't that work? Okay. So, right off the bat, I need to read, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? Okay, I'll make it fit. When you buy a radio, in particular a DMR radio, with that radio will have some type of a software package that you can do to interface with your radio. In the world of Anytone, it is this software package that I'm bringing up right now. And I wish that when I was, okay, let me move this screen so that is, so I can get everything in it. Stand by 1 second, guys. Sorry about this. I want to make sure that the recorded piece of it, I'm getting everything in the recording window.
So,
okay.
Dan, everything that you have in there did you enter everything in there, or was that programmed for you?
No. Everything that you're about to see, I put in here. Now, let me, and I'm kind of lying to you, because I also have an Anytone, not an Anytone, a BTEC radio that is the Anytone 878 clone, if you will. And I had already created a code plug, not nearly as extensive as this code plug that I'm going to be demonstrating tonight. And I was able to export the code plug files and import them into this here. So I actually did have a kind of a base to start out with, but it only had about 8% of what I have in this code plug. And so let's do a level set. Who remembers what a code plug is? Jan, help us remember what a code plug is. What is a code plug?
So a code plug is basically a way to take all of your programming information for your radio and package it up into a nice distributable package. Essentially, what it consists of is a whole bunch of CSV files, comma separated value files that encodes all of the information that you would want on the radio. Everything from your zones, your channels, your talk groups, your digital IDs for people you might contact, your scan list, any radio configuration stuff that you might have. All of that's encoded into the code plug, and it basically gives you a quick and simple way to program your radio. You just take that code plug and throw it on the radio, and away you go.
Okay, thank you. So that code plug, the complete code plug, has all of this information on the left-hand side here. All your digital stuff, all your analog stuff, all of the information that is tied to the radio. Everything is included in there. So what I wish I would have had someone show me this code plug when I first was setting this up, when I was first getting into DMR, because understanding how to build a code plug really helped understand what DMR does and what DMR radios do. And so you guys are now getting the benefit of having this code plug shown, and we're going to go through each of these things here. So right off the bat, by default, it comes up with the channel, and these are the channel numbers in my radio. And as I scroll down, or page by page, you can see that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of channels. As a matter of fact, there are 4,000 channels you can program into it. So it's amazing the amount of memory these DMR radios have. And even if you never use the DMR radio for anything digital, having 4,000 channels in the radio on the analog side, I think you could put in every repeater in the United States in here. There's just an awful lot. So in the channel, we are able to put in analog and digital frequencies. If I double click on a particular channel, I did channel 1, you can see channel 1 comes up. And here's where we go and define what you want this channel to do. For the first 400 channels, I put analog, because that's what I put on all of the Utah frequencies, all the Utah repeaters, all the I haven't divided up in counties, and we'll show that a little bit later on. But one of the things that made it difficult is the fact that you had to put in your separate receive and transmit frequencies. Dealing with 70 centimeter, it's very easy. It's just a 5 megahertz offset. But when you go to, let me go to a 220, we got 1.6 megahertz difference. That's a little bit harder. So maybe one day they'll be smart in have that automatically be set. But nonetheless, on all the channels, and this is true with any DMR radio you have, you will be able to go through each of the attributes of the channel, digital or analog, and put that information in there. Then you go to the next one, and it just goes to the next channel, and you just keep doing that, multiplied by however many channels you want in there. This is why it is very nice to use someone else's code plug so that you can use these channels already. Because one thing you can't do is I cannot copy and paste, a bunch of these together and paste them into another copy. For example, right now, by default, I have my let me go ahead and do a open.
Yeah, I noticed that as a shortcoming of this CPS software.
Yeah.
You would think it would be really easy to select a block and move it, or open new lines above or something like that. No, you can't do that. You can copy and paste a single line, but a single line is all you can do as far as I've been able to tell.
Yep. So you can go ahead and select 21. Or can you?
I think you just have to use the shortcut key. That's how I was doing it.
Okay, here we go. Right mouse click, cut, or copy, insert, paste. Yeah, that is. This is why it took me weeks to do this, because there's just a lot to do. But I have, when you are creating a file, then when you come back, it opens that file up, and you can see this file name is combined _1.06 firmware, and then my call sign. So this combined is my nomenclature for, I have the 878 handheld combined with this one that I created. And by the way, one thing that is good is I can rename this file and rename it to something else and send it to somebody, and they can go ahead and load this code plug into their radio and change whatever they want to change before they actually write it out to the radio. So that bears that's important to understand, is when you create these code plugs. I think I had to do this with my handheld radio. I had to first download the empty radio into the software so that it would get the type of radio that I was on. In this case, this is a D578 UV, and it's a tri-band, so you can see the bands that I'm authorized to work on that. And then you go ahead and do all of your fun stuff, create the code plug, and then you write it out to the radio. So usually there's a icon that says write to radio or read from radio. You can see that right there. In this particular software package, it does the same thing. One thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you have the COM port set. Once you plug my radio is not plugged into my laptop, so that's why you don't see anything there. But I like the Anytone, and those people that do have the Anytone radios, once you plug it in, it automatically sees there is no driver for the for that USB cable. You use any USB cable that plugs into the USB micro port in the radio, and it just reads. So that part, I'm glad they were able to do. But I digress. Back to the CodePlug.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
I put a link in the chat here to this N0GSG software. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's a package that a guy has put together that does simplify a lot of those manipulations. He's added extra functionality. The issue is it's not radio specific, so it's good for setting up your zones, channels, and that kind of stuff. But any of the radio specific stuff it can't do. But you can actually export your CodePlug from the Anytone software there from the CPS in this data communications format, DCF format, and then you can import it into this contact manager software. And it seems to be, I haven't played around with it a lot, but it seems to be a little easier to work with for certain things.
Okay.
So you might want to check it out when you get a chance.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So whether or not you're doing digital or analog, those channels belong in a channel on the radio. So the first thing is channels. Now, as Jan described last week, there's this thing called a zone. And these zones are basically groups of channels that are placed. And as an example, Salt Lake County, if I double click on that, it brings up every available channel, and I choose whatever channel I want to go into this Salt Lake County zone. So all of the Salt Lake County frequencies I have in there. The next one is Utah County, and I just keep Salt Lake County Aries. The reason why I absolutely love zones on a DMR radio is because when I'm in Utah County, which is where I'll be in about 45 minutes, so I got to hurry up here. I can just go over to that zone, and the channels that I pick will only be for Utah County, which is, I wish all the radios, like Yaesu radios, you can kind of do that by doing memory banks, but this is a kind of going on to the next step, being able to identify which channels go into which zones. And so we have tons of zones for the digital stuff, and I have every county in Utah and all of the repeaters in each of these counties belong in there. So as you can tell, that took some study, that took some homework to find out which repeaters go into which county. So again, once you have someone that is dumb enough to go through all of this work, then you can go ahead and get their information and pull out what you like. Another thing is a scan list. And this is something that I think is also very, very cool, where I can go ahead and let me open up this scan list. And this scan list is called Salt Lake County Repeaters. And I have all of the Salt Lake County repeaters in here of all of the available ones. If I had 4,000, then there'd be 4,000 on this side here. And scan groupings are different from zones in that when I go to a zone, I wish that it would automatically scan these channels within that zone, but that's not how they do that. You create your own zones. Come on. Whoops. I mean, you create a scan list, and so when you push scan on the radio, you then decide which which of these existing groups of frequencies you want to scan. There's also a roaming zone. I haven't obviously gone into that. You can program your FM frequencies, as in your local radio frequencies, your auto repeater offset, which I have yet to understand how this works, because even when I have that set up, I go to a channel, it doesn't. I'm not sure how this works.
Yeah, I haven't figured that one out yet either.
Yeah. So there's roaming. There's basic information about the radio. There is optional setting. The optional setting has a lot of things you can do with that. It just describes if you have Bluetooth, what you can do with the Bluetooth. Again, your FM radio, power save. When you power on, what message do you want to have on there? A password if you want. I mean, there's just all kinds of different things to put here. If your radio can record, you can do stuff like that.
Can I interject something
yes,
on the
please.
zones? Originally, some of the older DMR radios, they didn't have the flexibility which we do now. So when you picked a zone, it was a certain frequency. For like Salt Lake City, it would be Rogers DMR radio. And then you could put the channels in from that. And you went to a different zone, you didn't have any flexibility. It had to be to like Woodland in southern Utah County. So the zone was totally frequency dependent for that particular repeater or hotspot. So that's how it was first set up.
That probably still works with this, because it does have the zones in there. But I've kind of put my own spin on it and use zones as basically a grouping of channels that I want to.
Yeah, even like with MERS frequencies,
Uh-huh.
you can just put the 5 basic frequencies in that and just call it MERS, and then each one's a different frequency. I think it's great, but originally you couldn't do that. So
yeah, awesome. Okay, going down to the digital side, and this, it doesn't matter what radio you have. Everybody, you have your radio ID, which is actually your ID that you have to apply for.
Yeah, finding that was probably the most time-consuming thing about setting up my radio, because
Really?
I kept watching, little videos that talked about how to set your radio up and how to set up your zones and everything. Nothing ever mentioned where to put your radio ID. And so I finally found it by just clicking around. But that was very annoying that all of these great resources out there, not a one of them said, do this first.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And a lot of this stuff I had to figure out myself. And this is why it's been, for me, DMR has not been the easiest thing. But once I understand this code plug, again, I wish I had someone go with me and go through each of these things, because that would have answered a whole lot of questions. So here we have these talk groups. This is, again, very particular to the digital side. So on DMR, we have these talk groups, and we have lots of talk groups. There are hundreds of talk groups that you have to deal with. Let me go to, let's see, this talk group ID. See, Utah is 31.6 something, right?
That's
Ragnar?
3149.
3149. See, I wish there was is there a search? There's not a search. I thought there was.
No, that would be too easy.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
And scrolling is very painful as well.
Yeah. Scrolling is called clicking on this this here to go page at a time. So I don't know if 3149. There's Utah, 3149. So I'll double click on that, and there's that information there. So we have talk groups. We don't use any encryption because we're ham radio operators, but they do have the encryption keys in case that was ever used. A lot of this stuff I don't understand, although because this does APRS and I can do texting using that, I can use these create messages that are one-liners, but I haven't done that yet. But here's what I wanted to get to. I want to get to the digital contact list. If you recall, in my radio ID, I have this is actually my ID, my contact list. This is 316, blah, blah, blah. And here we have if I can find my 3161. I'm not going to waste everybody's time looking for that, but somewhere in here are two entries for me. And it has my information. So when you sign up, you will be registered, and I have to upload or download the current contact list and upload it into my radio in order to see who is talking to me. If I do not have your ID in my radio, I will just get your radio ID coming up. It won't have any information about you. It'll just say what your radio ID is. But that's neither here nor there. Just know that on any digital radio, you have a lot of these talk group or these contact lists, and this is my radio will do like 200,000. 300,000 contacts. So you can create a friends list. I have no friends, so nothing's there. And okay, so why did I show you all of this? Well, I showed you this because of the power of what you can do once you have everything set up. There is a import and export option here that I'll click on export, and everything that I've shown here, the channel, zone, contact list, FM, radio ID, everything here is there's a file associated with that, even APRS down here at the bottom. And I can, because I clicked on export, I can export just my channels to somebody in a CSV format, and they can import just the channels into their radio. So you don't have to do the entire CodePlug, although you can by clicking on Export All. And if I click on Export All, it asks you where do you want to save that file, and I've already selected the MARC presentation CodePlug, and I'm going to do the file name of MARC CodePlug presentation, and I'm going to click Save, and it asks me if I want to do this, and I click Yes. So this is something else that as you get a DMR radio, you'll notice that sometimes you have to wait. And because I'm exporting the digital contact list, this is the largest file out of all of them. It takes a long, well, when I say a long time, 30 seconds seems like a long time when you're waiting for it. So we're going to wait until he's done, and he will come and tell me that the file has been exported. Remember that I clicked on Export All. So something magic happens when this is done. And okay, here we go. Export complete. So I'll click OK. Now I'm going to go to my radio, go to where I have this loaded. There's MARC presentation. And look at this. It has the MARC code plug, and it creates a LST file. In addition to that, it creates a CSV file for every single of those fields that we saw earlier. Now let's take a look at how big that LST file is. It's only a 1K, which really is just a file that says this is where this other file stuff is. Look at this one here. This is 15 meg, and I'll bet you this is the digital contact list. This is why it takes so long, because this is the big one. And so it starts, you can see in the CSV format, you can see all of the contacts, digital contacts that are listed there. But here's the cool thing about this. I can go and I can just pick and choose whatever you want. You don't have to have everything. This is what when I create a code plug, these are the files that make up the code plug. This isn't the file that I sent Jan, for example, because I could have done all of this, and he could have imported this list file. But as long as all of these files are with it, he would have imported it just fine. But when I create a code plug for this particular software thing here, I just go ahead and save the file and send that file to whoever wants to get it, and so they have this entire. It's six of one way and half dozen the other. But my point is, when I export, I can do individual ones if I just want one, the scan list, and then I can send it to you guys. It's a CSV file. Then you can go ahead and import. Let's take that scan list. And here's that MARC presentation. I'm going to go over to scan list. Let's say this is the one that I sent, and I can go ahead and open that up and import that. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to screw things up. So this is what a code plug represents. These are all the files that make up a code plug. And in a GUI format, this is the code plug. Does anybody have any questions on what we've talked about?
So Dan, if you go back up to that tools menu, the last thing on that list is export data conversion file. And that's the kind of file that N0 GSG software will be looking for. So if you wanted to try that out, you can export your code plug in that DCF format and pull it into that other software. You'll still have to put it back into CPS, as far as I'm aware, to get it onto the radio itself. But I don't think the N0 GSG software knows how to talk to the radio. So you'll still have to pull it back into the CPS software for that, I believe. I'm not
So-
positive on that.
Okay, so I didn't see an import DCF file.
I think you can do that just from the regular import tool.
Okay, so I'm creating that file.
Yeah, it's going to take you 30 seconds again while it
Yeah.
downloads all the digital IDs.
And this is one of those things when we're swapping code plugs back and forth. I'll go ahead and export everything except the digital contact list because it takes a while. Okay, export file okay. Let's go ahead. First of all, let me just take a look at that tool. And okay, there's the import. Some of this stuff I don't know what it is. Default channel information options.
So I think if you do the import, I think there is an option in there.
Let me do import. And do I see it?
Well, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm going to have to
I'll have to do some experimentation with
do
that, I
some
guess.
experimentation.
You may
yeah.
be able to just open it from the file menu. I don't know.
I really don't want to experiment on my radio. Ragnar, can I borrow your radio? Okay, so let's see how big this DCF file is.
My receive doesn't work anymore, Dan. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's a 7 meg file, so apparently there's some compression going on there. But that's interesting. I will experiment with that and see what that's all about. But can everybody see the what a code plug actually represents? It is nothing more than a group of your channels, zones, scan list, blah, 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 blah. All of this altogether is your code plug. So when you hear someone say, I need to create a code plug, or I need a code plug I need to download a code plug or whatever, this is what they're talking about. This is the code plug in that is separated in all of the basic components of the code plug. With that is what that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. And if you have any questions,
Thank you, Dan.
let me know. You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
I will also stop the recording here.
Okay.